Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mac, John McMullen, the number one Eagles morning show for you all, 8 to 10 a.m., Monday through Friday. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, brother?
Doing well. Talking about Landon Dickerson Day before we get on. Probably a little bit too early to be Landon Dickerson Day, but here we are. Landon Dickerson Day.
It is an unexpected Landon Dickerson day for me, Johnny Mac. I speculated with who would be the next on the list. I even put him on the thumbnail because I'm like, this has got to be a shoo-in. It's got to be a shoo-in. And I was wrong, Johnny Mac, but we'll get into that. It's good to see everybody in here in the chat right now. I appreciate everybody watching. If you're listening right now, I appreciate it. Hit the like button for us. Drop your comments down below. We'll get to a couple of them as we always do on the show. We appreciate you all for being here. Johnny Mac, let's get right into it, man. The top 25 that we've been running along. You kind of just teased where you were going, John, but we are at number 8 on the list. Yesterday, we had Devontae Smith at number 9, Quinyon Mitchell at number 10, Zack Baun at number 11, Cam Jurgens and Dallas Goedert at 12 and 13. That was at the end of last week. We are now down to number 8, and you've tipped the hand, John, on who it is. But who is it, John?
Yeah, when you say Zack 11th, I'm semi incensed by it. Similar, not sort of a mini one with Landon Dickerson at 8. My buddy Ed Cratch is out in Monterey, California. He's vacationing with his family. Hope he's having fun watching whales. But I, I'm above board. I said, full disclosure, I ripped you for putting Zack Baun so low on your list. Ed will be on when he gets back to talk about it. But he did tell me he gave more of the credit to Vic Fangio. And part of that is true in that, would he have turned into what he turned into in any other environment? Probably not. But two things collided, and that was opportunity. Nobody was going to give this guy an opportunity, and the Eagles did because they didn't have any linebackers at the time, which is kind of hilarious now because everybody thinks they have the best linebacker room in the NFL. Meeting Vic Fangio, who's tremendously good at his job, and especially linebackers. Linebackers are sort of his expertise as a coach. So I do agree with that part of it, but once the player gets that opportunity and does what he does with that opportunity, it doesn't really matter to me if teams like the Saints are dumb and don't give him a chance. I mean, it's not necessarily his fault. So I think the player took the baton, but that's Zack Baun. Now, the second one who's too low on the list, in my opinion, is Landon Dickerson coming in at number 8. And, I just have this disconnect with giving so much to the rookies. We still haven't brought up Cooper DeJean, who's a phenomenal player. Anybody who listens, I've been talking about Cooper DeJean from day one, and the weird kind of doubt he has from some people, a group of the fan base who didn't believe that he was athletic, that I think now they realize, hey, you know what? He's pretty athletic. And he's a heck of a player, and so is Quinyon Mitchell. But they were rookies last year. They were tremendous rookies. Tremendous. Hit the ground running. Great futures. Great upsides. But then you have Landon Dickerson, who's made the Pro Bowl 3 consecutive seasons, and deservedly so. He's not like a 6th alternate. And in my opinion, and I may be biased because I get to cover him all the time, but I think he's the best guard in football. And I also think he is the lead bully on the team that bullies everybody. He is the biggest, most physical, strongest. He probably I don't want to say that because Land is a good dude, but he probably intimidated some people in high school. He is just a big freaking bully. And I mean that in the best sense possible. I don't mean he's actually going out there and bullying people. I mean, on the football field, he just beats people up. And, I do have concern over the knee injuries. He got hurt again last year. And part of the concerns is he's also the toughest guy on the team. And that's tough to measure, but he plays through everything. Everything. To the point where he had that injury, and he doesn't like to talk about it, and he doesn't have to talk about it in the off season, unfortunately. But you don't have to talk about injuries. But he said he was going to have surgery. I assume he had surgery. I haven't seen anybody confirm that. I haven't been able to confirm that. So please point me if somebody has. And he's right out there in spring work. He's not taking time off, which I think the Eagles should veer back on him a little bit for his own good, because he tore his ACL at Florida State. He tore an ACL again at Alabama, famously. That's why it was second round pick. He tore his ACL in the SEC championship game and was back to take the final snap when they won the national championship. Now, it was ceremonial, but still out there. And the guy was doing backflips at his size early on. I mean, he's an amazing player. And I know people but they don't, Jason Kelce kind of broke that wall. But for most offensive linemen, they don't get the hype of the skill position players. Let's be honest. But
no, they don't. They don't. And you're right. I agree with you on Landon. I think 8 is a little low for my boy Landon Dickerson, especially when you bring up that Cooper DeJean has not been mentioned yet. But look, John, this shows you how good this team is, honestly. But what do you think of Landon coming into this year? Obviously, I know you just mentioned he played a very versatile player. He played what was center in the NFC title game, right? With the
he started, didn't
yeah.
finish because he hurt his knee,
right? Didn't
pretty
finish
significantly, but played. He actually sat out the second half. Cam Jurgens, so it was a story of the toughness of both of them,
right? Really was.
But then he played in the Super Bowl. And he didn't play that well. Neither did Cam, believe it or not, in the Super Bowl, at least but they shouldn't have been playing, but they both played. And that's the kind of player he is. But and like I said, a little bit concerning because he had the 2 torn ACLs in college. And I always joke he's not only Eagles' best left guard, maybe the best left guard in the NFL. He's their best center, and their center's pretty good. Because he was an All-American center at Alabama, as you know, and won the Remington Trophy as the nation's best center, and was originally drafted to be one of the heir apparents. The first one they drafted was Isaac Seumalo, amazingly, to replace Jason Kelce. Then it was Landon Dickerson. And then, Isaac became so good at guard. They said, let's scratch that. They drafted Landon. He became so good at guard. Let's scratch that. And they drafted Cam, who finally took over for Jason Kelce. And even after 2 years where he had to play guard for one of them. So that's how amazing Jason Kelce's career has been. But, yeah, I mean, he is so important. And the tush push, which everybody loves. More than anything, the most important player on this team to the tush push is Landon Dickerson. Now, I would argue Kelce when he was here because he would steal some
so you need 1 yard. Kelce was taking like half of it.
Yeah. But post Kelce, he's the most important player when it comes to the tush push. And so big, so strong, so physical. And from a football perspective, and again, I don't want to play it up, but I'm talking from a football perspective. Lane's a bully. Jordan Mailata is a bully. Mekhi Becton certainly was. But the king bully is Landon Dickerson.
Yeah. Reminds me of his pregame speeches. I think even Johnny Mack would like those. I choose violence. I love the Landon Dickerson pregame speeches. But great player, John. A lot of injury. He had some injuries last year. He obviously coming out of Alabama, he had some injuries to the knees. Do you have any concerns about that, or do you think overall? I mean, he's been pretty healthy since he's been in Philly. It's not like he's missing that many games every year, but it is something that's lingering. And when you're a big boy like Landon is, it's something you think about. How much do you? How much concern does that do you have on the knee injuries and just how banged up Landon has been?
Yeah, a little bit. As I mentioned before, yeah, I mean, 2 ACLs in college, hurt his knee again, and he tends to play through stuff. There's been little things he's hurt as well, and he might not even be on the injury report. We talked about that with Kelsey, so a little bit concerning because of his style of play as well. And he's going to fight through stuff. And if you fight through stuff, you might injure yourself more. It's just his nature. He's going to fight through it. So a little bit, but he is 26. I don't think he's going to be one of those guys playing till 36. Because he is 330 plus pounds. He is 6'6", and that ain't good on the legs. But right now he's in the prime of his career, as he said last time I talked to him. They make doctors to fix things. So that's his mentality. And yeah, he's just, and that's the Eagles took a shot on him. I mean, this is the guy, he got picked 37th, which is pretty damn high. Fifth round, basically the fifth pick in the second round, or sixth pick, whatever. But he would have been a first round pick if he didn't tear his ACL the second. So they got that kind of talent and took the shot, and it's worked out. And even if it goes off the rails as early as this season, he's already been worth it 100 times over. It hasn't been the only thing, he hasn't been named All Pro yet, which I think is kind of.
Who was the All Pro guards last year that he didn't get it?
I have to look it up. I know Quinn Miners in Denver was one. He's very good. I forget.
Is he better than Landon?
I would say he's the one closest, but I don't get to see him every day. I mean, like I said, I think Landon, but I get to see him every day. I'm sure Joe Thuney was the other one. And he's been great for a long time. But I'd have to look it up. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think he's the best guard in football. Again, he's in the conversation. Quentin Nelson's. Yeah, Joe Thuney. Quentin Nelson's in that category, but he's aging a little bit. He was great when he was younger, man. Oof. That guy was offensive line porn. That's how they described him in the NFL.
Yeah, no, Quentin Nelson is definitely legit.
So he was, but he's getting a little bit older. Time moves on. Same thing with Thuney. Thuney's got the big reputation, but he's getting older. And I'm not going to kill him for the Super Bowl because he's playing out of position, and Josh Sweat owned him, but he's not a left tackle. He's only forced because Kansas City couldn't find a left tackle. So, but he's on that very short list, and the only ones I put it on, Chris Lindstrom's very good too in Atlanta. So you have Lindstrom, you have Miners, Quentin Nelson, Joe Thuney, Landon Dickerson. Those are probably top 5. If you ask me, I'd put Landon first, but nobody's, and I do get a vote. I voted for him. And I'm kind of surprised he didn't make at least second team All Pro. But that's neither here. He's still young, and sometimes that's a reputation thing. Again, Nelson and Thuney have the reputations, especially on the offensive line. People kind of default to reputations. But picking hairs, he's very good. And he's very important to this team and what they try to do.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Let's get to some super chats here. Appreciate the 2 super chats today. Jason 18 checks in on Dickerson. He says, watching Dickerson play reminds me of the old days, just nasty and violent. I don't think there was a better guard in football, and he was a center. Well, that's a good sentiment right there, man. You're right. It is kind of old school, though, isn't it, Johnny Mac, the way he plays the game?
Yeah. That's a good thing when you talk about nasty, violent. It's not a good thing on public, but it's
especially for a running football team.
Yeah. And for an offensive lineman. So, yeah, he's an old school guy.
God, he's like a sweetheart off the field, man. Have you ever watched his Instagram account with his wife?
Great dude off the field.
He's got this Instagram account with his wife. It's called Dickerson DIY. So he does like DIY stuff around the house, and great. God bless him. The guy makes all the money in the world, but if he wants to fix something in his house, he does it himself, and I respect it. I love watching that shit. I like DIY work, so I love watching it. Very entertaining. Him and his wife DIYing up their house, fixing up their closets and their lawn. He's a wholesome dude, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, he's a North Carolina guy. He's, he's sort of more southernish, a country guy.
Big country.
I remember when he got his contract, which is like 84 million, 4 years, 84 million. He got asked a goofy TV question. Well, what are you going to buy first? And he said a lawnmower. Damn, he bought a lawnmower.
Yeah, 0-turn lawnmower, man. Those are big in that world.
Yeah.
Those are for that precision cut, John, where you can make like the lines in your lawn.
Yeah.
You guys love that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great dude. But, he's also, if you don't know him, he's pretty damn intimidating too.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just, he's 6'6", 330, whatever, like I said. And he's, people used to say that about Linval Joseph, and now I hear it a lot about Landon. The NFL is basically, especially offensive line, it's basically a league of very strong people. And when you're considered to be amongst the strongest, that's saying something.
It's a good way to put it.
And he pushes people around.
No doubt. D. Hughes checks in. What's up, D. Hughes? He says, was watching the show late yesterday. Fun fact, Stan got popularized from the Eminem song Stan about a fan that was overly obsessive. Yeah, I had a complete brain fart on that yesterday, D. Hughes. I actually know that song very well. That's the one that has the Dido thank you as sampled in it. Like, you know that song at all?
Yeah, I'm sure I do. I don't, yeah.
It is funny.
I like Eminem. But, it's like a kid's term. I don't know. Is Pumper a kid?
No, it is kind of a kid's term, but that is where it began. Eminem wrote a song about Stan, and it was his biggest fan, and he was like, it turned into like 3 verses, and by the end, it turns out that the lunatic fan is like a psychopath, kind of, is kind of how I would put it. But it's pretty funny. It's a good song.
Well, Robert De Niro did a movie about being an obsessive fan long before the Eminem song.
I might have to check that one out.
Wasn't that good? You don't need to check it out.
All right, yeah. If I got plenty of other,
not one of his best, I would say, but he was the obsessive fan. Yeah, goofy term, violation, also a goofy term.
That thank you though from Dido or whatever, however you pronounce her name, is stuck in my head. That's a good. I like that little phrase. Thank you, D. Hughes. Appreciate that, John. A couple more questions for you. On Landon Dickerson, what is his ceiling, do you think? I mean, is it just how long?
I think he's already hit. Yeah, he's already hit his ceiling. I mean, just the accolades of being a first-team All-Pro, which to me should have already been. He's already, again, if you're top 5 in your position, and he's clearly top 5, worst case scenario. Kenny, I don't know, like Quentin Nelson, because he's a guy I mentioned, like at his height, it's probably the best guard I've ever seen in the modern era, at least. I don't think he's quite that. But again, that's like, to me, it's almost like Aaron Donald, like Quentin Nelson in his prime, like as an offensive lineman. So I don't think it's quite that high, but I think it's right underneath. And I haven't seen Quinn Miners enough. I know people rave about him, so I'm sure he's tremendous. But like I said, if you're in the conversation, that's all it means. You know, you're that's good enough as far as I'm concerned, because people are always going to have favorite flavors and things like that.
Yeah, no doubt. John, last year with the big running game, obviously, how big of a part of that was Landon? You talk about how dominant or how
well, I mean, all you have to do is ask Saquon. I mean, he constantly. I mean,
yeah, right.
All you have to do is look at Saquon's career. I mean, he was really good in with New York, but he was just like a really good. You see a bunch of good running backs. That's what he was. And he gets here. It's not only Landon, it's the entire group, but it's historic. And then you look at non-Saquon level players. Again, the Eagles have had a Pro Bowl running back. You know, Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift. Who are what are they? And then you saw the difference when you had Saquon was putting up Miles Sanders like numbers with the Giants. And then he gets here, and I'm saying Miles went his best year in Philadelphia. And he gets here and he just takes off to being what people thought he would be coming out of Penn State. Even more so. I mean, nobody was saying, "Hey, he's gonna set the all-time rushing record." You know, because you never put those expectations on anybody, or you shouldn't. So, yeah, the offensive line. I've said it 100 times. It's the best room in the NFL overall, any position. It's certainly the best group here by that, and it's one of the best groups ever put together. It 20, 30 years from now, I'll probably be dead, but you guys hopefully will be still talking NFL football. This will be regarded as one of the great offensive lines of all time. This stretch with Stoutland. People have gotten spoiled. Boy, if you think about the Buddy Ryan days and the offensive lines they had, I mean, the level of all pros and Pro Bowls in the history of this franchise was minute until Stoutland got here. Now it's every year. Twice in the past few years, they've had every single guy on the offensive line has been either All-Pro, Pro Bowl, or Pro Bowl alternate. All five.
It's crazy.
It is. It's one of the best offensive lines ever. Ever.
Is Jeff Stoutland the best offensive line coach ever?
Well, he's in there. He just got honored. The PFWA just honored him for lifetime achievement. He won the Paul Dr. Z Award, is what it's called, lifetime achievement for assistant coaches. So he's already got that award. 12 consecutive years he's had at least one Pro Bowl player, which has never happened before. So again, he's in the conversation, definitely. There's some other great ones, but and right now, if you talk about today, if you talk about best assistant coaches, position coaches, I'm not even talking about best offensive line coach. He'd get a lot of votes for best assistant position coach, regardless of position. And that's why everybody's so high on, well, every generally every year. And it's not. I mean, he's had failures. Everybody does. You can't, but everybody gets a little bit better. Brett Johnson's the guy who talked about it best.
Yeah. It's a good example.
I don't know if you heard Fred talk about when he got here. He was just miserable, and he was like, he admitted he was in a dark place, and thought he was treated unfairly in other places. And he got here, and he was on the scout team, and Stoutland wouldn't give up. He kept, coaching him hard. And he's like, I'm just holding the bag. Leave me alone. He just wanted to pick up his check. And to your point, I think you were talking yesterday, can Stoutland put enough effort into all the guys lower? He does. He doesn't stop. He coaches them like they're Lane Johnson. And Fred, gives them all the credit in the world for not giving up on him and getting him to the point where he can be a capable swing tackle in this league. And, obviously Mekhi Becton came here to work with him. Holland Pierce is a guy. I'm like, and, Zach Berman brought that up to me. We were talking because he was listening to the show, and he told me he didn't agree with my Holland Pierce take, which at the time was, if I'm Holland Pierce's agent, who's the undrafted kid from Rutgers, 6'8", 344, another huge kid, I said basically I'd steer him somewhere else because, the Eagles have Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata. They signed Kendall Lamb. They signed Matt Pryor. They drafted Miles Hinton. They drafted Cameron Williams, all tackles. That doesn't even bring up the guys who can play tackle in the pinch, like Brett Toth and Kenyon Green and all those guys. All I said was that I would have steered them to a place that needed tackles. Now, from the standpoint, but I also said, which I don't think Zach heard that part, was that, maybe he just wants to work with Stoutland and that'll help him on his next opportunity, wherever that might be. But the numbers game is just so brutal for him here. And the Eagles will try to keep him on the practice squad. If he's here, Stoutland wants to work with him. So if he gets through waivers, they'll put him on the practice squad. But yeah, that's how well regarded just being around Stoutland can be for a player's career. But there's always Andre Dillard's. Nobody's perfect. And if you don't have the desire to get better, you're not going to get better. But he's probably one of those guys, and Vic's in that category as well. The Eagles have a lot of good assistants. He's going to get you to where he's going to make you better. Wherever your ceiling is, wherever you are in your career, he's going to make you a little bit better.
No doubt. Dank Yang Gang checking in. What's up, Dank? He says, NFL Films did a video on Stout and how important his wife is to the player. She convinced him to stay. I saw them post that. I never watched that though. I got to watch that.
Yeah, he was out the door back to Alabama. He was going back to Alabama after Doug got fired, to the point where who's the great college football reporter? Boy, I'm forgetting his name. Feldman, I believe. Anyway, he was reporting that he was going. He rarely gets stuff. He was out the door. And Allison Stoutland said, yeah, I don't want to move. And so, yeah, she deserves a lot of credit for keeping Stout. And obviously, it's one of those things where, Nick Sirianni didn't have a history with him, but you'd be goofy to not want him to be your offensive line coach. So he had no problem with it. But yeah, if it wasn't for his wife, he probably would have went back to Alabama. Because you get loyal, and he was loyal to Doug and what they had accomplished. And was probably a little upset, but people get over it. It's a very nomadic profession. So, I follow Gunter Brewer on X still. For those who remember Gunter, he was here as the wide receivers coach for only one season. Great dude. Coached Randy Moss at Marshall back in the day, and now he's back at Marshall. And I said, well, that's interesting. And I saw on social media. And then it made me look up Gunter's career, and boy, man, this talks about a coaching career, right? He was at the first time he was at Marshall, my first tangent of the day was Randy Moss time. So 96 to 99. That's when he was at Marshall. Then he went to North Carolina, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, back to North Carolina. Then 2018, he got the Eagles wide receiver job, which at the time was not a great job because they didn't have any wide receivers. And they went in a different direction. And he went back to college to Louisville. Then he went to Maryland. Then he went to Virginia Tech. And now he's back at Marshall. That's the life of an assistant.
Yeah, it's crazy,
coaching.
man. Coaching is you really got to be committed to it, man. It's tough.
Yeah. Certainly tough on families and things like that. But, obviously, if you're a football lifer, you kind of love the game. And,
Right.
if you are married or something like that, it's, the wives. And you hear Nick Sirianni talk about his wife, and a bunch of guys talk about their wives because they do so much work with kids and stuff with that because you're, working 18-hour days or whatever. I blame Dick Vermeil for that.
How so?
Because Dick was the first one where it was made into a thing. He'd sleep in his office and when he was here. And then it became almost like a badge of honor. And I always thought it's stupid. There's rules, there's federal laws that prohibit like truck drivers from driving more than they should because it's not good for you. How is working 20 hours a day? How is it making you more effective? Because you're probably dead tired by the end of
depends
it.
Depends who you are, depends what your goals are, I guess. I mean, or what your motives are.
But I mean, guys like Steve Spurrier kind of scoffed at it. He was a great college coach. He'd be out going golfing by 4:00. There's a balance. And I think, and nowadays it's kind of funny, even more funny, because then you could actually do stuff in the Dick Vermeil years. When you have 6 preseason games and 2-a-days and
Yeah, right.
all that stuff. And now everything's so limited. So I think it's there's a better balance. And some things are just common sense. I always bring up my worst day in football. Now I'm off to another tangent, which is the day that Corey Stringer collapsed and ultimately passed away.
Yeah, that was.
Now, I say this because I'm old and people don't even believe me, and I'm telling you, it is true. They didn't let us as reporters take water on the field. Now, these are training camp days. These are days when there's still 2-a-days. They scaled back a little bit to day, second would be special teams, but a lot of hard work, a lot of 2.5-hour practices, 3-hour practice. It was brutal. And that's just standing there. And now when I was much younger. And the players, there was it was looked down if you wanted to get water. You had to tough it out. Think about how stupid that is.
It is stupid. I mean, it's one thing to have a good work ethic, but water, that's health. I mean, you need nutrients in your body. You need the things your body needs to be able to work.
Sleep is health as well. You talk to every doctor now, and that's why I bring up Chip Kelly. I'm on 70 different tangents, but it's the off season. The one thing I loved about Chip Kelly is, and there were a lot of bad, but there was a lot of good. and some of the sports science stuff and the sleep monitors and stuff like that, the Eagles still preach that stuff. They're not going to put the sleep monitor, but they're like 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours.
8 hours is a lot. How much do you sleep? Do you know?
God,
I wear this Whoop. I love this Whoop band. So it kind of gives me the
5,
day
6
on that.
hours. But I'm not an athlete. Athletes are trying for peak performance.
Right. Big difference there. Yep.
So, sleep monitors and all that stuff, hydration, checking the piss, making sure you're hydrated properly, all that kind of stuff. He's way ahead of the curve when it came to that. Now everybody does it, and the Eagles have continued to do it. And he deserves credit for that. And he probably will never get it. But I only bring that up to point out there's a lot of stuff that seems like common sense after the fact. Gee, when we're doing it, that's number one with like they did that for so many years. It's like, what? How stupid is that?
Right. Do you think there's anything that goes on right now that we'll talk about in the future like this?
Well, yeah, but coaches wearing I work 18 hours as a badge of honor. Like, what? Are you good? Are you innovative? Are you better than? Then you can go golfing, as far as I'm concerned. If you're just sitting there to prove to me, like you're George Costanza, and you leave your car in the parking lot, so they think you're the first guy in and the last guy to leave.
Well, I think there is still something to be said about work ethic, but I understand where you're going in terms of a balance and the things that actually matter in terms of just, versus just logging 18 hours because you feel like you have to. I mean, shit, I've logged plenty of those days in my life just doing JAKIB the last 5 years. Doesn't mean it's all the right use of my time, but
you're logging 18 hours to do something. I'm saying to be productive. If you're doing it just as a badge of honor, like every NFL coach, not every, there's guys with reputations, like I said, and even Doug would leave, to go golf, and some people would criticize him for that. Later in the day, it's like the first coach to win a damn Super Bowl. You can criticize them all you want, but yeah, it's like it almost for a while there, it became a part of the job description. And I just think it's silly. And guys become alcoholics and get divorced. It's like, you want a good employee, a productive employee? How about not making him alcoholic? Because his wife's bitching at him because he's always sleeping at the office. Things like that, which I think is common sense, but common sense is not so common.
No, it is not. Good stuff there. Good conversation. Kimberly Sirico checking in. What's up, Kimberly? Good to see you in here. She says, I was born in Brooklyn and grew up in Staten Island. Howie was born in Brooklyn and Stout grew up in Staten Island. Have a great day, my football family. There you go, Kimberly. There's your connection to the two big people in the Eagles organization.
Yeah, Howie grew up a big Jets fan. Yeah, for those who don't know.
Yeah, didn't he try to get a job there and it didn't work out or something?
Yeah, the Jets could have had Howie. Wouldn't have worked out anyway.
I'm waiting for the Jets to offer Howie like a percentage of the ownership and fleece him out of there.
Yeah.
Fleece him out of Philly.
Woody Johnson ain't doing that. Trust me.
Listen, if I'm an owner, would you give Howie 1% of your organization?
Well, would I?
I would.
1%? Yeah, maybe I would.
If I'm the Jets, 1 to 2%. That means if my team is worth $10 billion, Howie's walking with $100 million if he sells his equity.
Well, I'm just saying Woody Johnson ain't giving 1% of his team to his closest friend. So,
I know. I'm just saying, if you can bring in the best general manager in football to fix the train wreck that is your football team, I would do it. I don't know. Maybe other people wouldn't do it. I think that's worth the price of admission.
I don't think you have to, number one. I don't think any owner wants to be that. The owner who does that would be the most unpopular owner in the history of the NFL. They won't let it
because then the other owners will step in and say, we're not opening up that can of worms.
Exactly. So, No, it's not going to happen. You don't have to do it. And I think Howie knows by now that the grass isn't always greener. Because he could leave if he wanted to, but why would he want to leave?
Where
Jeffrey
would he
Lurie?
go? I mean, he's at the top right now. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, what would be, in theory, what would be?
Well, I'm saying more money. People could blow him out of the water and just there's no salary cap. I mean, again, I don't think the NFL would approve of giving away ownership, but who knows? But just money in general, anybody could offer more money. But I think he's smart enough to know that, look, he's not going to be as successful everywhere. Jeffrey's a big part of it and allowing him to maneuver. And plus, he hates when you say he's on scholarship or he doesn't have to worry about getting fired. But I mean, and that's true. I mean, he already got demoted once. Jeffrey moved on from Joe Banner, who was, he was even closer to at one point. So it's not like he won't move on or he can't move on or it'll be in perpetuity. And certainly if Jeffrey steps down, you have no idea what his son is going to do as the owner. But it's as safe a position as you can have as a general manager in the NFL. That you can say unequivocally, safest GM in the NFL. You go to another situation where you haven't built up this goodwill with the owner just as a money grab, and he doesn't need the money, obviously. Yeah, then you're on the clock like every other schlub.
Yeah. True.
He's too smart to do something like that.
No, yeah. Brian Fleming checking in. What's up, B. Flem? He says, it was how it was, though, in 2002. Water was considered a weakness. I was doing 3 days in August for camp. When Corey died, it was mandatory water breaks.
Yes.
Yeah. Changed a lot.
Yeah. It was considered a weakness. And everybody who played football from high school through the pros knows that people today who didn't grow up through it, they kind of laugh and say, that's not true. Oh, it's true.
It's true. It still impacts today. When I was in high school, John, at St. Joe's Prep, and I was a senior, one of my classmates who was not in my grade, he was a couple years younger than me, but he died at St. Joe's Prep football practice. Ryan Gilliard was his name. Rest in peace to him. But I don't think it was the case of they weren't letting him drink water or anything, but it does show you how, being out in the sun all day and grinding like that obviously has.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure you do the right things. Yeah.
Even today, every year there are deaths, and especially at the high school level, because you don't have as much, observation and people there to trainers and things like that. Yeah, every year kids die practicing, unfortunately, but and sometimes it's not related. To me, if there's a lot of, when that happens, there's a lot of underlying heart conditions they may have not known about. I'm not talking about those instances because those are, how do you prevent that?
Right.
But when it is related to hydration, that's a big effing problem today. And it should have been back then. But again, common sense is not very common. Like, why would water, when it's 100, and people don't think Minnesota gets hot. It was hot that day, and it was brutal, and it was humid. And you're not allowed to have water. I mean, that's just stupid.
I can't believe that was a thing. You can't have water? What the fuck does me taking a shot of water have to do with it?
Not only can you not have water, you were, as Brian correctly points out, he's not lying, it was considered a weakness. And, Corey was a little bit overweight, so you had that part as well. You know, he's a big offensive lineman, very good player, by the way. Yeah. And Mike Tyson's go, and Mike Tyson's a great dude, but yeah, I mean, he was ragging him, you know, stuff like that. I mean, like Brandon Graham calls everybody fat boy, you know, and people call Brandon fat, you know, is it, you know, that's Brandon. He's just trash talking. It's not meant in a, he's not trying to hurt you. He's not, you know, he's just trying to joke around. And that's part of football. Anybody's been around the locker room. There's untoward stuff, especially in this era where everybody's so politically correct. You're going to hear some untoward stuff. And if you can't handle it, you can't handle it. There's a lot of people probably today who can't handle the way it used to be. And that part of it's probably too much, but yeah, the common sense stuff. Boy, where were the doctors? Where were the Where were the sports science people? But yeah, Brian is completely correct in that it was considered a weakness to drink water.
That's not good. Let's move on, Johnny Mac. Get to our first commercial break. Somebody I want to bring up real quick while we're on this note is I didn't bring it up. I failed to bring it up yesterday, and I apologize for that. But former Eagles Super Bowl champ Brian Bremen is battling a very rare, aggressive cancer, and the quote is "in the fight of his life." So I think he's undergoing a 12-week treatment in Washington. There's a GoFundMe set up for the very rare form of cancer, but praying for him, John. That was a sad story to read, and I just wanted to bring him up as a form of recognition on the show to be able to at least bring it up, let people know about it. If you want to donate to him, there is a GoFundMe. I'm sure it's not a cheap procedure that he's going through, and I'm praying for him and his family, man.
Yeah, heck of a special teams player. One of the Eagles' best special teams players ever, I would say. And that doesn't, you know, it was back in the days where they pretty much signed one or two guys to play special teams specifically, and it worked out. I know J.J. Watt gave like $10,000. Obviously, people can't give what J.J. can give, but, you know, he was a teammate of Brian's in Houston. Yeah, very difficult. Anytime stuff like that happens, but life ain't fair, man. It just isn't.
No, it really isn't sometimes. Praying for Brian Bremen. Hopefully he has a full recovery. We'll keep him in our prayers. I'll keep you guys posted on that. Cancer, man, is an awful thing. Hopefully we can get some humans to cure that. But that's above my pay grade. I am not that guy. I just talk sports with you guys. Appreciate everybody being here. Hit that like button for us. We'll be right back here on Birds 365. I want to talk a little Eagles schedule today. I'm going to look at some of the games. I'm going to talk to Johnny Mac about, what Eagles Cowboys, what jumps out. So we'll talk a little bit about that coming up next here on Birds 365.